Hey my friends, part 2 of making a dust mask. We have come over to the sewing machine. We have sewn the two edges together. Oh, let's see if I can get it. There we go. Sewn the two edges together and pressed them flat. And now we are ready to continue with our project. We have got both sides going, 1 and 2, and we have faced them wrong sides in. So we will just pin them together, making sure to line up the centers. And by pin, of course, I mean clip, because I'm lazy and clips are faster. Clip them together, making sure to line up the centers. And this should take like about 6 clips, because we also want to clip the ends together, making sure to line up the ends. And we want to do them from the top and the bottom so that the clips don't get in the way, because this next step is going to be where everything just starts coming together. All right, lined up. And ready to go. All right. So now I've got some bias tape that I made last night of the same fabric as this green. It is 1/4 inch bias tape, which just means that I started out with 1 inch worth of fabric, and this is double fold, so it's all nice and finished on the inside. I'm going to take and cut that end square because it's at an angle, and then I'm going to cut a piece that is just slightly longer than my end, because I can always trim it down afterward. And then sew that bit of bias onto the end. So let's make sure everything is lined up really well. Shove it up under the sewing machine. Drop our foot. And I said everything is lined up really well. Sorry, sometimes fabric doesn't do what you want it to do. And then sew down. Just nice and slow. Take it easy. Because it's such a small space, you want to make sure that you end up with a really even seam. If you don't end up with an even seam, it'll be noticeable. Alright, so trim that off. Trim the excess bias off the ends now that it's sewn on. One end and the other end. There we go. And then we've got an even tape of bias on our end here. And then we're going to do the same thing to the opposite side. So again, cut a bit of bias that's just a little long. Come on, you. There we go. And then pop it inside, make sure everything is lined up, everything. Put it under the sewing machine, drop our presser foot, and I said everything is lined up. That means you, fabric, and oh, nope, lost my thread there. Hang on. There we go. Okay, try again. Line it up, presser, pull my threads. Come on, you. There we go. Evenly all the way down. Just off the end. Because we're going to trim it anyway, so it doesn't matter. And then trim the bias to be even with the fabric at both ends, and we are most of the way there. Check both sides to make sure that all of our ends are trapped in underneath the seams, and they are. Good. And then what we're going to do is take this center clip off and bring back around our bias tape and start just the other side of the center on the bottom. I like to start on the bottom. It ends up, in my opinion, with a nicer looking finished product. But if you prefer to start in a different place, absolutely do so. It is something that I am just making up on the fly. So if you don't like how I'm doing it, do it how you want. It is entirely up to you. Alright, and again, slide it under, making sure everything is in place. And this is a sort of start and stop process here. We're going to be adjusting it as we go, checking as we work along that everything is still lined up and inside and the way we want it to be. So this is going to be just a project of increments. Okay, make sure the next section's lined up, and over and go. Okay, all the way until we run off that end. And all the way off the end. And a little bit of extra room. Now, what we're going to want to do is go back to our ruler and measure from the end of the piece down the bias 6.5 inches. The first time I tried this, I did 7 inches, and that ended up just too long. So 6.5, and just put a mark there. Something water soluble or whatever. Just make sure that you mark that place, and then continue on sewing down your bias. All the way down, and then just before that mark at 6.5 gets underneath your presser foot, we will grab our piece back up again, pull that clip off, and line up this edge. So this is the one that we put an end on first, and this is the end that we just sewed bias over. So we're going to line up that edge with the 6.5 inch mark, and that will create our ear loop. So the loop that goes around the ear. We've got a loop over here now. So then we're just gonna continue sewing. And we're going to continue sewing around, making sure everything stays lined up, making sure our bias stays even and in place and is catching the fabric. Oh, fabric's laid out there. So come on, back inside. There we go. Just going slow and easy and making sure everything stays the way that we want it to. All the way around. You could pin this all ahead of time, but that's not my style, so I'm not going to. If that's easier for you, absolutely do it. Do whatever makes it easiest for you. I'm all about it being just the easiest thing. Alright, now when we get to this upper part, it's got that curve in there. So this upper part is tricky. It's also why we use bias type, and it's also just something that you're going to have to kind of fiddle with for a little bit and just go slow and be careful. Because it's really easy at this point to have your fabric slip out from inside of your bias tape and things like that, and that's just no good. Okay, so line it up inside, pull it over, make sure that everything's where we want it to be. And this is why we're using bias tape for this, because it's cut on the bias, and because it's cut on the bias, has a little bit more give, so it can do things like go around curves. Just makes life a little bit easier. Just a little bit. Sometimes you just need life to be just a little bit easier. Okay, and now that we've gotten around that curve, we're going to check the back side to make sure that everything's caught in, and it is perfect. Okay. Just check as you go. Work on it, continue checking. Go slow when you have to, go fast when you're confident, but don't get too confident, because I've messed a couple of these up. Just from not making sure that my inner fabric was actually caught inside when I was sewing. And around, and excellent, we're out on the bias tape again. So let's measure our 6.5 inches again. There we go, 6.5. And put a mark. There we are. And then sew down to our 6.5 inch mark. Because it's so good. Oop. There we are. Right up to that mark, and then do the same thing for the other side. So slide it in under with that raw edge lining up so that the bias is coming in and covering it to make the second ear loop. Alright, let's pop it in under. All in all, looks like this project is taking me just less than an hour to do. As you get practice at it, you'll get faster at it. But That's not necessarily a good thing, because the faster you get, the more likely you are to make mistakes. There we go. Okay, all the way around. And then what I'm going to do is, before I get to this end, I've got this whole card of bias over here still that I am just having hanging off my project. So I'm going to take and cut it at an angle, angling away from the bottom. There we go. Okay. That means that I can set this card of bias tape away for another project or another dust mask, as it's probably going to end up being used because I'm almost out of this matching fabric for it. And work on finishing this on up a little bit further. And pull that up underneath. Actually, let me pop that needle down and just do a little bit of arranging that way. There we go. And set my presser back down. And then, while the needle's down, turn the fabric and go back off, so all the way off the bottom at the same angle that we cut the bias at. So whatever angle you cut it on, just sew off. There we go. And we are finished. One completed dust mask. This one happens to be half one way, half the other on both sides, but it's still reversible. If you do this project, definitely show me. I would love to see what you're doing. And these are very useful and fun, and they can be cute. So I would be happy to hear from you, and I will see you guys all later. Bye.